Hey everybody, it's Katie. Some of you may have heard that eating certain foods can help boost your milk supply. But is it true? Today we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about it. We're going to talk about some of those foods, and we're also going to talk a little bit about some of the things that you shouldn't do while you are trying to boost your milk supply. So before I jump into the food, the very first few things that I want to tell you is when you first have your baby and your milk's coming in and you're getting ready to start nursing your baby or start into this journey, there's two things that I want you to keep in mind. And it's, like I said, it's not food, but I think that it might help lay a foundation. Number one is to nurse on demand. Now, of course, some of you might be thinking like, well, it's a baby, of course I'll let them do whatever. But there's actually some literature out there that suggests, schedules for little babies, and this is when you should feed them at this time and this time at this time. My suggestion and what worked really well for me in helping with my milk supply and helping regulate was letting my brand new little baby kind of just nurse whenever she wanted. Now, there were some times when she was super sleepy and we were creeping up on the 2-hour mark. I'm like, okay. And they say don't wake a sleeping baby. That's true. But I also, in the early days, wanted to be careful to keep my brain in milk production mode and help kind of regulate. So I would occasionally wake her. But again, this isn't so much advice on that, but it would be to nurse on demand. And that looks like whenever they look hungry, just kind of offer the breast and see if they want to eat. And then number two, real quick, make sure the baby's latch is good, because if you're not efficiently feeding your baby, then you're kind of going to undo a lot of work, and also you're never even going to really get to the food part, because if the latch isn't good, it's going to hurt you. They're not going to be happy because they're not getting milk the way they want to, and they're probably not going to be getting enough. So those are two things that I would really keep in mind as you start into this journey of breastfeeding. Now, from what I've read and the research that I've done, there is no food that is 100% proven without a doubt to raise milk supply. I think that there's a lot of really great things, and I think that, and we're going to touch some of them, I think there's a lot of really great foods that can help, but I don't know that at least I'm not aware that they've done, scientific studies that say oats help milk production, because I do think our bodies are all so individual and unique. So just keeping that in mind, there is a lot of literature out there that has a lot of really compelling stories behind it saying this really helped me. And when you get into the hundreds and thousands of women all saying this worked for me, then I think it's important to pay attention to that. So the first thing I'm going to say when we talk about food is to encourage you to eat a balanced meal. Now you're probably like, well, that's kind of broad. Yes, it is. And we'll get into some of the specific foods here in just a minute, but eat a balanced meal. So that's going to look like carbs, good carbs, protein, fruits and vegetables, and don't forget fats. Fat is actually essential, especially during this part of their lives and in your life when you're producing milk. It's important. So make sure that you're actually getting all of those things and eating as balanced of a meal as possible. And I know that might feel a little overwhelming, especially when you're like, well, I have a little baby and I'm going to be nursing. How am I supposed to cook? That's when you have a meal train, or that's when you actually allow your tribe to help you. For the first little while, have people help and do meals. I was fortunate enough that my family was able to provide pretty much a meal every single day for the first few weeks with both of my daughters, and it was huge, to say the least. Like, even if it was they just brought me, oh, well, we had this for lunch and we brought you our leftovers, I was like, yes, I'm starving. So it was perfect. I had that help, and then also, of course, I had my husband who was helping as well. But we were working really hard to ensure that we were having balanced meals. And that's also, of course, trying to stay away from fast food. Now, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with fast food occasionally, but don't let it be, especially when you're building your supply and your nursing relationship with your baby. And here's why. Occasional fast food, that's all right. What you're getting is not actually complete nutrition. Typically we need way more leafy greens than we do carbohydrates in the form of a bun or French fries or whatever. And then, the cheese and all the mayonnaise and all that stuff. So when you think about what you're actually getting, and I'm talking about true traditional fast food. It's not typically complete. While it's okay for an occasional treat meal here and there, I would suggest doing your best to make sure that your meals are as nutritionally complete as possible. Now, there's a bunch of lists out there, and I actually probably went through, 4 or 5 different websites looking at just kind of refreshing my mind. But as I've gone through nursing both of my children, both of my daughters, these are things that I've seen over the years as I've looked into milk production. So this isn't a complete list, and I would encourage you to research it for yourself and see, because there might be something that I say and you're like, I mean, there's going to be a whole kind of list of things that you can go through. So the first is oats and whole grains. Now, oats is one of those easy things that you can, you could do dry oats, you could put them in your smoothie, you could make oatmeal, you could do oat lactation cookies. Those are actually a thing, and those are just delicious little fat bombs. Those are great. So oats, I think, is probably one of the more popular ones. And then there's, of course, the whole grains and all that stuff. The next one is one of my absolute favorites, but my husband thinks that it's like boogers, and it's avocados. I love avocados. My girls love avocados, and it's like a superfood. It's amazing. It's wonderful. It's rich in the perfect kind of fat that you actually need. And it, again, kind of in the whole like good fats that you can use and that you need, that fits right along in there, and it's yummy. So you could have sliced avocado, you could have mashed avocado, you could have, okay. The next one that is one of my favorites is nuts and seeds. And so nuts, are a good source of protein. And then there's also seeds, and there are some particular seeds that are supposed to be better than others. There's fennel seeds, and then there's also fenugreek seeds, and those are things that you can incorporate into your diet, because a lot of the supplements actually have those two things in them. So instead of going to the supplement, why don't you just go to the source and start? I actually saw a recipe that looked fantastic. It was a salad dressing. Again, here we go with the fats, and it had fennel seeds sprinkled into it, and I'm like, perfect, because I love salad. And yeah, anyway, so nuts and seeds are another really good one. Another thing on the list is green leafy vegetables. Probably don't need to say a whole lot. If it's green and leafy and looks like grass or rabbit food, you should eat it. It's probably going to be really good for you, and it's also purported to help with milk production. I mentioned them a little bit earlier, and there's 1,000,007 recipes out there for them, and we'll actually try to include some in the description below. But those are lactation cookies. And again, I mentioned those just a few minutes ago. They've got oats in them, and that's one of the main ingredients. But lactation cookies are fantastic, and they're also supposed to be helping with your production, but also when you're hungry, they're a good snack to help keep you from getting, because when you're nursing and you forget to eat or you don't have time to eat, it hits you a lot harder than when you're just not nursing and forget to eat, because it's like all of a sudden you're like, I might die. I think I'm dying. I can feel it at the end. It's coming. The last thing on the list that we're going to talk about, and like I said, there's a whole lot more, but the last thing on the list that I want to talk about is the lactation teas and supplements. Those are out there and they're available, and I have heard from quite a few women that there's great success. My suggestion, though, would be don't go straight to those. Have that be kind of the last-ditch effort. And if you are truly concerned about your milk supply and how much you're making, I would so strongly encourage you to go and see a lactation consultant and have them help you. Because one of the things that I encountered with my second was I wasn't so much concerned about whether or not I was making enough milk. We were dealing with a latch issue. But what I never knew before this is I went in and they weighed my baby before I nursed her, and then they weighed her afterwards, and it was one of those really specific scales so they could see just how many ounces she took in, basically, and I was shocked. She was little, and I mean, she nursed, I forget how long the session was, but I was amazed at how quickly she had caught on and how to get that milk out of me. So again, a lactation consultant will be really helpful in whether or not you actually truly do have low supply, and they will also be able to direct you to some of the better quality lactation supplements and teas that are out there, because there's a lot. Now, as I mentioned, the very beginning of the video, we're going to talk about the don't do's while you are trying to build your milk supply and starting off on this nursing journey. Number one is don't go long stretches without nursing your baby. Sometimes I realize that can't be helped, and I get that. If that's the case, try to pump. Because the longer you go, the more your brain's like, oh, okay, well, maybe baby doesn't need as much. Meanwhile, your baby's like, yes, I do. So try not to go long stretches, at least in the first few months without nursing. Number two, and this is super important, and I get it, I get why it happens, but don't diet. When you're trying to build your milk supply and your nursing relationship, don't go on a diet. I get that right after you have your baby, you're like, yeah, I'm ready for this to all be done and gone. But at least in my experience, eating a healthy diet, drinking a lot of water, the baby actually kind of helped me lose some of that weight, because as I was eating healthy and as I was letting her nurse as often as possible and going on short little walks here and there, she actually helped, because she was consuming a lot of milk and it was taking a lot of me to produce that milk. So don't diet, at least not yet. The last but not least, and this should be a given, but I think there used to be an old wives' tale that if you drink a beer, it's supposed to help. Now they're saying don't drink alcohol, because alcohol can actually inhibit milk production. This is not to say that you can't have an occasional glass of wine or a drink here and there, but they are now saying don't drink a whole lot of alcohol when you are trying to get the supply going and when you're nursing, because it actually can affect your supply. If you have found this video helpful, I would be honored if you would consider sharing it. And also, if you have any suggestions or things that worked really well for you, I'd love to hear about them in the comments below. It's always fun to hear about what other moms are doing. If you like it, give it a thumbs up. I'd also like to invite you to be a subscriber. That would be awesome. If you haven't checked out our Facebook page, we've got one of those, and we're on there every day posting content, and we'd love for you to interact with us in that way as well. Hope you guys are doing really well, and we'll see you for the next video. Bye!